Hello, my name is Josée Sabourin, and I will be presenting my undergraduate thesis project on the topic of food truck mobility, policy, and social media. Due to COVID-19, this poster presentation will be digital. Gourmet food trucks have become increasingly popular in urban culture. What started as an accessible way of owning a food business became mainstream fairly quickly. We have seen this with TV shows like Eat Street, The Great American Food Truck Race, or the movie Chef. Not only are food trucks a more financially accessible option, they also offer mobility to go where the customers are, rather than having them come to you. Urban policy and mobility, when it comes to food trucks, appears to be an understudied domain of literature, and therefore, this thesis aims to answer three research questions. To what extent do food truck mobility patterns vary across the sampled cities? Does urban policy limit or encourage mobility across the sampled cities? And to what extent does social media, notably Twitter, play in the localizing of food trucks in the sampled cities? I opted to use a handful of different methods for this project. Firstly, the sample. Many factors played into choosing of the cities. However, most important was a high degree of activity. Boston, Eugene, and Vancouver were the three cities with the most food truck activity during this sample period. Using the Street Food app, all food truck locations in three cities were recorded during the period of November 4th to November 10th, 2019 inclusively. Tweets for all of the active trucks were also recorded. All locations were then added as points to a base map. Boundaries were overlaid to these base maps in accordance to their specific policies, such as limiting parks or downtown areas. Using visual analysis from maps as well as statistics, I observed locations that were posted on the Street Food app versus those that were not, meaning only on Twitter, tweeted locations versus non-tweeted locations, weekday versus weekend locations. Looking at this first map of Vancouver, what we can see is this red zone. This is the stationary permit zone, essentially meaning that if a truck operator possesses this permit, they can locate in the downtown zone, but only on one specific corner. You'll notice that there are a handful of trucks that are clearly outside of this boundary, indicating a desire for mobility so great that operators will either pay to obtain a roaming permit or risk fines. In Map 2, many of the trucks locate in Boston's parks. Boston is the only city of the three that allows vending in parks. Given that the parks are the most popular locations, clearly trucks find this appealing. We can also see that the Greenway is a popular location. The Greenway has its own licensing practices separate from the city, showing that the city's licensing may not be worthwhile, or the Greenway is simply more appealing as a location. When observing the Twitter data, in both Vancouver and Eugene, it is clearly not very popular. Both cities only have 2 trucks tweeting. Interestingly enough, Vancouver's tweets come from the stationary permit trucks, meaning that Twitter may be a marketing tool rather than a localizing tool. Finally, the mobility across the 3 cities was relatively low. This graph shows the number of unique locations a truck visits during the observation period. What we see is that most trucks only frequent 1 to 2 locations in the 7 days total. So what does this all mean? In terms of my first question regarding mobility, I conclude that there is no single mobility pattern across these 3 cities. However, mobility is relatively low. For the second question, of the 3 cities, Boston did exhibit the most mobility. I attribute this to some degree to the policy. The ability to locate in parks and little restrictions on where to locate all prove this, whereas Eugene and Vancouver's policies inhibit mobility. Lastly, for my third question, Twitter does not appear to be a popular tool in the food truck industry, although more popular in Boston than other cities. This, I suggest, has a direct relationship with the lack of mobility seen in these cities in addition to the simple decline of Twitter in recent years. I would like to sincerely thank you for taking the time to watch this digital poster presentation. For any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me at jose.sabourin@mail.mcgill.ca.